This Sunday is the National Day of Reflection for the COVID-19 pandemic. This year marks 5 years since the pandemic began, and this day of reflection gives us a chance to come together to honour and remember those who are sadly no longer with us. Between 2020 and 2023, 1,111 Medway residents sadly lost their lives to COVID, and at the peak we saw 100 registered deaths in just 2 weeks. The pandemic impacted each and every one of us. We'll have to make changes and adapt our way of living to protect our vulnerable friends, family and neighbours. However, this Sunday is also an opportunity to give our thanks for the tireless work from so many people: health workers, educators, frontline staff, the voluntary sector, faith leaders and charities. Our own public health team mobilised a vulnerable people's hub in just 5 days in 2020, establishing a food delivery service for vulnerable residents. Working closely with the voluntary sector and other partners, within 3 months, more than 5,300 people were supported with more than 111,000 meals. This service was the starting point of the Medway Food Partnership, which continues to grow today. And that is just one example of where local people stepped up to the mark to help keep the rest of us safe. And this should never be forgotten.
I'd like to personally pay credit to everyone who was involved in Medway's response to the pandemic, especially the work of social care staff, with care workers and providers facing some of the most difficult challenges of all. The testing effort in Medway was also a massive task. Between November 2020 and March 2022, more than 125,000 on-site tests were carried out in Medway. Between April 2021 and March 2022, more than 340,000 home testing kits were distributed. I also want to take some time to focus on the heroic work of our late Director of Public Health, James Williams. James's actions, dedication and drive undeniably saved thousands of lives. He was a leading light and driving force behind Medway's response, sharing his knowledge and expertise with others to keep our residents safe. He also played an integral role in opening the South East's first asymptomatic test centre in Medway in the winter of 2020. The centre became a well-established and recognised component of Medway's response in reducing the spread of COVID. On Sunday, I'll be taking the time to reflect on the work of Jayne's and countless others who were there for us in what was a challenging time, as well as remembering those who will no longer be with us and their families who lost loved ones.
The pandemic was, without doubt, one of the biggest challenges the NHS has faced in its history, and certainly the worst time most of us have experienced in our working lives. I want to take this chance to pay tribute to all my colleagues in the hospital and across NHS in the Medway for their monumental effort, hard work and sacrifices they made. The emotional and physical strain on our staff was high, having so many sick patients whose lives couldn't be saved, having to wear full PPE for long periods and having to restrict visitors when their loved ones were so ill was extremely tough. We lost some of our own much loved colleagues as well, and we remember them today. In many ways, we are still recovering from that time, but thinking back to the recognition and support shown across the country to the health and key workers with the Clap for Carers movement is something that still fills me with pride. It's also important to recognise that the work doesn't stop. Winter is the busiest period in the NHS, and we continue to see pressure from flu, COVID and other respiratory illnesses every year. One thing I would want people to take away is ensuring you and your loved ones are protected is the paramount importance, and the best way you can do that is through vaccination.
Our thoughts remain with everyone who was impacted by the pandemic, and I hope you are also able to take a bit of time on Sunday to reflect and remember.